Good evening and welcome to the Daily News Roundup. I am Abigail Smythe. Among the stories in this evening's newscast, medical doctors accept base rate fee proposed by government. Fishers affected by Rio Cobra contamination to receive millions in compensation. NHT breaks ground for new housing development of Waltham Park Road in Kingston. Narcotics Division disrupts transnational drug trafficking syndicate in Ocho Rios. Private sector organization disappointed with recent utterances by government minister about opposition leaders' skin color. In business, Jamaica considering designing skills exchange program to supply Guyana's labor market. In the region, trucks fill their tanks for the first time in 2 months as gang leader lifts a blockade from fuel terminal. Further overseas, global COVID-19 deaths fall by nearly 90%. And in sports, Reggae Boys draw 1-1 with Cameroon in international friendly match. Now for the news in detail. On Thursday, Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton signed contracts with 4 private health facilities under the public-private partnership component of the Project Code Care initiative. Project Code Care is a mission geared at reducing the surgical backlog as the COVID-19 pandemic forced most of the attention and resources to COVID care.
COVID has had a number of side effects. And one of the side effects, as I term it, of COVID was the extent to which we had to prioritize the COVID response to COVID-related matters, and where we had an option to delay certain procedures, we exercised that option, and surgeries and elective surgeries in particular gave us some wiggle room to exercise that option to prioritize the COVID. Now, prior to that, to be totally frank, we were doing a similar thing, maybe not at that rate, where emergencies were always prioritized, and we have a very high trauma society for whatever reason, self-inflicted including. More often than not, the public health entities and surgeries in particular were prioritized to those emergencies that come in every day, pushing back electives on a consistent and ongoing basis.
The 4 facilities in the partnership will serve persons in the Southeast Regional Health Authority, which covers the parishes of Kingston and St. Andrew, St. Catherine and St. Thomas. Project Code Care is aiming to reduce the surgical backlog by 2,000 over a 12-month period, and also reducing wait times for elective surgeries to less than 180 days. Among the cases that populate the wait list for surgeries are oral, sinus, and thyroid cancers. Medical doctors have accepted the base rate fee proposed by the government. President of the Jamaica Medical Doctors Association, Dr. Mindy Fitzhenley, says only that aspect of the government's compensation package has been put forward, and that was discussed at the association's meeting Tuesday evening. She says the negotiations will continue as there are other outstanding points that need to be addressed before an agreement can be reached. Dr. Fitzhenley says they have very particular rates that apply to duties performed at different times and locations. She states they do not have those figures and adds that they were informed of possible changes to their work week. She says there is no further information, and as such they cannot agree to any changes until they have seen a proposal. Fisher folks who were affected by the latest contamination of the Rio Cobra River in St. Catherine are to receive $16 million in compensation. This will be from the $117 million Environmental Performance Bond, which the National Environment and Planning Agency NEPA has drawn down from UC Lasal Windalco. Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, Senator Matthew Samuda, says the fishers are among those to be compensated for the contamination of the river between July 26 to August 4 this year. Minister Samuda notes that among the other entities to be compensated from the bond are the National Water Commission, which is due to receive $43 million, and the National Irrigation Commission, which is to receive $17 million.
$15 million initially for the fisher folk who have been impacted, and we have committed to, in line with the Ministry of Agriculture's assessment for farmers and fisher folk, provide greater assistance as we come to new budgets. This would have happened during the middle of a budget cycle. We wouldn't be able to react in that way in the short term. However, we have committed that in line with the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries assessment of about $55 million of displacement to address the shortfall in other budgets.
In the meantime, the St. Catherine Parish Development Committee is rejecting the compensation. Vice Chairman Kestanad Gordon is threatening to take further action to secure a much larger compensation. Mr. Gordon argues that the figure should be at least twice the $16 million. Attorney at law Dr. Marcus Goff, who represents some of the affected residents, says there may be legal action due to concerns residents have over the methodology used to calculate the compensation. He says it was not inclusive or transparent enough. The National Housing Trust, NHT, has broken ground for the Howard Apartments development off Waltham Park Road, Kingston 11. This development will house 248 studio units. The project is being completed in partnership with the Centauri Real Estate Company Limited under the NHT's Guaranteed Purchase Program, GPP. Prime Minister Andrew Holness says while the housing market is constrained by balancing supply with demand, he is assuring that the government will continue to implement policies and strategies to improve efficiencies of agencies that have the task of supporting the government's thrust to provide affordable housing. In the meantime, Member of Parliament for St. Andrew South-Western, Dr. Angela Brown-Burke, has lauded the NHT for its commitment to constructing safe, modern and sustainable communities. The real estate company says through continued collaboration with the NHT, the construction company would be able to provide more housing solutions to lower and medium income ranges. NHT Chairman Lennox Channa highlights that the NHT's mortgage financing options, led by the organization's low interest rates, continue to shift the market toward improved accessibility and affordability. The Howard Apartments is one of several developments being constructed under the GPP. The program, which was launched by the NHT in 2018, allows developers to conceptualize and execute their development plans while the NHT absorbs the market risk by purchasing part or all of the development. This approach seeks to leverage the efficiencies within the private sector so that units can be delivered at lower costs and within faster time frames. The NHT notes that upon completion, residents at the Howard Apartments will enjoy a clubhouse, gazebo, drying yard, children's play area, exercise area, roof garden, green area, and a jogging trail. The Jamaica Constabulary Forces Narcotics Division disrupted a transnational drug trafficking syndicate operating between the United States and Jamaica. This following the seizure of a large quantity of cocaine in Ocho Rios, St. Ann on Wednesday. 8 cruise line passengers were taken into custody. Reports are that the 8 people, all U.S. nationals, earlier disembarked the vessel which arrived in Ocho Rios from Miami, Florida. About 1:30 p.m., they were reboarding the vessel for departure and anomalies were detected in their luggage. During a search by members of the Narcotics Division, a total of 24 packages containing cocaine weighing just over 17 kilograms or 38 pounds were found concealed in their bags. The drugs has an estimated street value of $850,000 US. The passengers were arrested for breaches of the Dangerous Drugs Act. Their identities are being withheld pending further investigations. The 17-year-old Kingston Technical High School student who is charged with the murder of her schoolmate, Michionne Campbell, was again remanded when she appeared in the Kingston and St. Andrew Family Court on Wednesday. She is to face the court again on December 7. The attorney representing the 17-year-old, Kimberly Whitaker, says a gag order was issued by the judge. Michionne Campbell was stabbed to death at school on September 29. Reports are that about 2:30 p.m., the deceased and one of her schoolmates got into a heated argument which developed into a fight. Campbell was stabbed to the left side of her neck and the left side of her forehead. The other student received injuries to her left wrist. Both girls were taken to the hospital where Campbell was pronounced dead. A memorial service was held for Campbell on October 21 at the Pentecostal Tabernacle Church in Kingston. Detectives assigned to the Halfway Tree Criminal Investigation Branch, CIB, are seeking the public's assistance in locating a man who is wanted in connection with robbery with aggravation and unauthorized access to computer data. He reportedly robbed two women of their cell phones and bank cards and withdrew $100,000 from an ATM. Reports are that on August 18, the man was among a group of men traveling in a white Toyota Probox motorcar with red registration plates affixed, purporting to be a taxi. Two women boarded the vehicle and were reportedly robbed of their cell phones and cash. The men then took one of the women's debit cards, demanded her PIN, and withdrew $100,000 from her account at an ATM. Closed-circuit television footage from the ATM displayed the man's image along with another man at the location during the withdrawal. Anyone with information who may be able to assist the police in locating the man is asked to contact the Halfway Tree CIB at 876-926-8185, Police 119 emergency number, or Crime Stop at 311. The Private Sector Organization of Jamaica, PSOJ, says it is disappointed with recent utterances by Government Minister Everald Warmington about the skin color of opposition leader Mark Golding. Speaking at a Jamaica Labour Party constituency meeting on Sunday, Mr. Warmington said Mr. Golding's skin color would be a hindrance to him becoming Prime Minister.
Where Mark Golding, Madam Fall, come from? A white man, white one from England. Okay? So don't talk about my leader Barnya. And you attack Siaga then. And you don't attack Mr. Gowam, yes, my leader, PMP and this. Prime Minister where? Jamaica? If he wants to be Prime Minister, go back to England, Ireland, Wales, or Scotland. But then beat Michael Handjo Holness.
The PSOJ president, Keith Duncan, says these comments are racially divisive and have no place in the Jamaican context, as they are inconsistent with the motto, "Out of many, one people." Mr. Duncan says Mr. Warmington's utterances also contravene the political code of conduct signed by political representatives. He notes that distasteful and divisive statements from either side of the political fence cannot be condoned or supported. The PSOJ president is calling for Prime Minister Andrew Holness and opposition leader Mark Golding to manage the tone of the communication of their political operatives to ensure it is in line with the agreed code of conduct. In the meantime, the People's National Party has also expressed disgust. The party says Mr. Warmington using Mr. Golding's skin color to incite hate against him is, quote, "a most repulsive political stunt which must be rebuffed by society at large," end quote. In business news, Jamaica is considering designing a skills exchange program to supply Guyana's labor market with short-term technically skilled personnel. Minister of Investment, Industry and Commerce, Senator Aubin Hill, outlined the plan following a trade visit to the CARICOM state last month. Guyana is poised to be one of the world's biggest oil producers by the end of this decade. With the expected increase in workforce needs in Guyana, Minister Hill seized the opportunity to highlight the capacity-building potential of Heart NSTA Trust to deliver the National Council on Technical and Vocational Education and Training certification. He also stressed Jamaica's ability to supply short-term, technically skilled personnel to support Guyanese expansion. Guyana's workforce needs will reach 2.5 million in the next 3 years from a population base of 790,000. And this presents expansive opportunities for an increased demand for food from which Jamaica's agribusiness sector and its players could benefit. There's also an opportunity to export processed goods, explore joint ventures with Guyanese entities to utilize raw materials, and create synergies along the supply chain for the mutual benefit of Jamaica and Guyana. In the region, dozens of trucks lined up at the main fuel terminal in Haiti's capital on Tuesday to fill up their tanks for the first time in 2 months. For the past 2 months, a powerful gang seized control of the area. The drivers were protected by a heavily armed police convoy that formed 2 days after gang boss Jimmy Cherzay, a former police officer nicknamed Barbecue, announced that the G9 gang that he leads was lifting a fuel blockade and allowing drivers to fill up at the depot. Government officials say gas stations, which have been closed since mid-September, would be restocked through to Friday and open to customers on Saturday. One truck driver says he is relieved to be working again and earning money as he almost died of hunger. Officials with the Varu terminal say 45 trucks were supplied with more than 300,000 gallons of diesel and more than 39,000 gallons of gasoline. And on the international scene, Hurricane Nicole has weakened to a tropical storm after making landfall on the U.S. state of Florida's east coast Thursday morning. State of emergency and evacuation orders are now in place as heavy rains continue. The storm has left more than 100,000 people without power. Storms of this size so late in the year are rare. After Florida, Nicole is set to hit Georgia and South Carolina. It could possibly even hit Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York later in the week. The World Health Organization, WHO, says there is a nearly 90% drop in recent COVID-19 deaths globally compared to 9 months ago. It says while this provides cause for optimism, vigilance must be exercised as variants continue to pop up. WHO reports that last week, just over 9,400 deaths linked to the COVID-19 were reported, while in February of this year, weekly deaths had topped 75,000 globally. It says testing and sequencing rates remain low globally, vaccination gaps between rich and poor countries are still wide, and new variants continue to increase rapidly. The UN Health Agency notes that the tally of newly registered COVID-19 cases worldwide came in at over 2.1 million for the week ending Sunday, down from 15% the previous week. The number of weekly deaths fell 10% compared to a week earlier. Overall, the WHO has reported 629 million cases and 6.5 million deaths linked to the pandemic. And in sports news, the Jamaican Reggae Boys drew 1-1 with World Cup-bound Cameroon on Tuesday in the Central African country. Justin McMaster put the Jamaicans ahead in the 60th minute with an audacious chip over the head of Cameroon goalkeeper Marcelin. However, 14 minutes later, the Cameroonians responded through Kaiba Jawal with a deflected shot from outside the box. The World Cup is scheduled to take place in Qatar from November 20 to December 18. And Jamaica's Khadija Bunny Shaw, who plays for Manchester City in the Barclays Women's Super League WSL in England, was awarded Player of the Month for October. Shaw, who is in Jamaica for Jamaica's two-match friendly international series against Paraguay, has been on fire as she led the team after a slow start to the season. Shaw is in her second season in the WSL and scored 5 goals in October, including 2 braces after she took over from the retired Ellen White at City. She scored a brace against Leicester in a 4-0 win, and 6 days later she added 2 more against Tottenham in a 3-0 victory and another against Liverpool. And that's it for your news roundup for today. I am Abigail Smythe. See you next time.